Hello folks, and welcome to another Richard Head Longbows video. If this is your first time here, this is the channel that helps you make bows and arrows by making lots of instructional videos, and occasionally we chat about archery and its history and other strange things like that. And today is no exception. We are looking at old Bowyers wives' tales, or old wives' tales, that happen to revolve around archery and mainly the art of bow making. And well, we've got an old Bowyer's wife in the room, which kind of makes sense. You've got an old Bowyer's wives' tale then for us, Mother. Hello, Mother.
Hello, Philip. I'm not old.
Sorry. Oh, you're a Bowyer's wife. So these are young Bowyer's wives' tales.
One of our friends, Marjorie Yew, had picked up a bow some years ago in the Dunster Minehead area. And there was a gentleman in the club named Ernie Potter who maintained that if you wrapped it in fleece from the sheep, well, they sort of collected it, I think, from the barbed wire and hedgerows and made a wadding and wrapped the bow in this wadding and then put it into the chimney and left it, and so that the lanolin soaked into the wood of the bow and therefore revived an old longbow. And they did do it. Marjorie shot it.
So the myth was that the wool lanolin would revive the longbow.
Yeah, it did work. I mean, that's what she told me.
Were you drunk?
No. Yeah, it's very Exmoor, though, isn't it? Very Exmoor. It might have been like a sort of a cider niche, sort of an alcove beside the chimney, the fireplace, which we had one at Pickwick, a cider niche.
Well, I can't argue with the science. It sounds very true.
That's the old wives' tale.
Thank you for that, old Bowyers, young Bowyers, middle-aged, not quite dead wives' tale.
Middle-aged one.
Can I have an old Bowyer now, please, to tell us some
you have to.
Bowyers' tales?
Right.
Send them in.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Well, that was my mum, if you didn't know. And here's the one with the beard.
Hello.
Not the mummer, as the dinosaur from Dinosaurs would say. Remember that?
What are we talking about?
Old Bowyer's wives' tales.
Oh, yes.
Well, old wives' tales, but that associated with the art of bow making, of which there are many. We usually get told these to us time and time again when we're at events, usually at sort of craft fairs and things where we do bow making and what have you. Members of the public will come up to us and say these things, but of course they do the rounds now in a very different way, and that is on the internet. So we thought we'd have a look at one or two of them.
Yeah.
I believe you do have a real peach for us here. What's this one you've got?
I don't know about that. We might have to do a series of these, because these are just a few we thought of. Yeah, someone did mention on one of the Facebook threads that was going about seasoning yew and seasoning it by putting it in a stream with running water. So is that a good idea? But it's not unheard of, or at least it's been mentioned before. And I saw it years ago in The Archer's Craft, the book by Hodgkin, which I think you can probably still get hold of. It was written in the 1950s by Adrian Elliott Hodgkin, who I think was a military man, and he had retired when he wrote this book. I think he was born in probably 1980 or something. Sorry, 1880, not 1980. Otherwise, he's
younger than me.
Oh. So, anyway, back in the 1670s, if you were making bows or interested in archery, you would almost certainly have this book in your collection. It's written in a very sort of homespun sort of way. He was very much a gentleman amateur, and it chronicles his attempts, unsuccessful attempts at making longbows, and it's got a bit of archery stuff and all sorts of things, which is quite interesting. And he talks about yew. He got permission to go out on Salisbury Plain, no doubt being part of the military. He was allowed out there to cut some yew. And there's pictures of him splitting the staves, showing you how to split it. And then, of course, seasoning it. And if you air season it, you're looking at 4 years he was seasoning it for, which is fair enough. And he does refer to this other method. So he says there is a method of seasoning yew more quickly than this by immersion in running water, but I cannot tell you anything about it. So he obviously didn't know anything about it and didn't attempt it. I looked up on the internet, and yes, it does crop up. And I think the idea was that it washes the sapwood out of the wood more quickly. The idea, yeah.
What do you mean, the sap?
The sap, soft
sap.
wood, otherwise you wouldn't have anything to make a bow with. No, do apologise, just slip of the tongue there.
The sap.
This is the old bowyer.
The old Bowyers.
Old rambling bowyer. So yeah, no, the sap. But I mean, I thought seasoning wasn't just drying wood. I mean, it's going to be pretty wet after you get it out. You don't put it away for a while to dry out after you've had it in a stream. Obviously, you can dry wood more quickly by putting it in an oven or something, and gently a kiln and gently drying it. But I thought it was more of a chemical sort of change within the wood, where it seasons very slowly. But anyway, it is something that's known about. I don't know. I mean, years ago, where they still do it in Canada when they were logging, you used to see thousands of logs in the river, floating them down to the sawmills. Whether that helped at all and whether it was did anything to them, I don't know. Just a thought. So it's not unheard of, but not something I'd particularly recommend or try. You get a decent piece of wood. Why on earth would you want to risk putting it in a stream?
I was just going to say, any time that we work with bows at any stage, really, if you get the material wet, you can damage it. You can start lifting. You can start changing. I mean, storing a stave that's completely seasoned, that I've cut up, ready to work on, accidentally putting it in a wrong place in your garage or something, and it gets mold on it, can affect it. So it's not something I've come across. I don't know of a bowyer who is doing it. Are you a bowyer out there who is seasoned? Yeah,
perhaps someone knows more about it. And
I'd love to know. As far as a conclusion, we'd have to say that it is a kind of a myth, because simply that the reference that Richard just read out, he says that I can't tell you anything about it. So even he's just heard of it, but has no idea how it works and doesn't seem to be using it as a method anyway. So
that's right. I mean, we always split logs when they're still green, so that it dries and seasons evenly, and you don't get it cracking from the outside just under the bark. And if you don't do that, it stays slightly damp, and you can get sap rot in it, which is this dark line between the sapwood and the heartwood. So that's one thing. There is mention of it. We've got no experience of it. If anyone does, let us know.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know if anyone is using that. Yes, one of the other ones that we often get mentioned is churchyard yew. This is usually people outside of archery and bow making, the people that would come up to us at country fairs, as I mentioned earlier on, and say, oh, well, yes, of course, that's why they planted yew in churchyards, isn't it, for bows, to make bows. Well, no, they don't. As I say, anyone who is a bowyer or inside the bow making world will know predominantly yew in churchyards really isn't any good for making bows. That's not to say All of it isn't, but the majority of it is. If you next time you're in a churchyard, go and have a look at a yew tree, you'll probably find it's growing all over the place and looks like a bit of a bush and isn't necessarily any good for making bows. The real reason that yew trees are there is that they've been there well before the churches were there. They've been considered a part of the religious ceremonies of various different types of people around the world and various different ages going back thousands of years. Because of its evergreen nature, it's obviously been considered a tree of life, certainly in the sort of pagan religions over here, and also a tree of death. As well, because I think the Greeks used it. They had a goddess of death who was referred to with the yew tree. The Celtic Druids got some research here. They saw it as a sacred plant that they used in death rituals. So it's a tree of life and sort of tree of death. It also grows on very poor soil, so it's seen as something that is a bit of a survivor, as I say, the tree of life. It was in 601 AD that Pope Gregory suggested that places of pagan worship could simply be converted into Christian churches. So those trees were already there well before the churches that we now see, the Christian type churches there, surrounded those trees that are there. And also there's a good reason why the churches were happy for those trees to be there, because they are poisonous. Not that they were trying to kill people, but they were trying to keep animals out, and farmers knew that the needles and the berries and what have you of the yew tree would kill their animals, because animals would go into graveyards and would dig up bodies, and so to keep them out of the graveyard, they were quite happy for the yew tree to be there. So yeah, that really is, we're definitely one of those myths. Yew trees were not planted in churches to provide wood for bows.
Did the colour of the yew tree have any relevance? You know, the red heart?
Yes. Sorry. Yeah. Later on, to the Christian religions, as say that took over those pagan sites, the sap wood being white and the heartwood being red. For them, that signified the blood and the body of Christ. So, as I say, the Christian religions were quite happy to take on the yew, and also yew was used for making staffs and things like that for sort of pagan type rituals, and I believe some kings and queens had staffs made out of yew as well.
Another one we've got that people refer to is a bow at full draw being 7/8 broken. I think they mean that it's really just at its maximum power. Again, I'll refer back to Hodgkin, which I showed you earlier on, and in fact there's some pictures in there of the tree he found, presumably out on Salisbury Plain, all the staves he's got from it, and him splitting one up. And he refers to this, and it was actually Thomas Waring, who was an 18th century bowyer, who mentioned this, a new bow being at full draw is 7/8 broken, not 8/8 broken. And Hodgkin says, it is when I've been working on my bow for some time, so I've been making a bow, and I'm getting it well into shape and have almost reached full draw, that I am gripped with an emotional crisis. Probably the making of your first bow has been exciting all along. This wears off with making many bows, but the crisis to which I refer does not. It is the decision to draw the bow to the full. Shall I do it now, risk the consequences and get it over, or shall I wait a little, think it over and prolong the agony? He then goes on to say, a bow full drawn is 7/8 broken, said Thomas Waring, the 18th century bowyer. Sometimes a new bow full drawn is 8/8 broken, but mercifully not often. So approach the full draw in prayerful mood, and whatever you do, don't guess it. Fix an arrow or stick to the length of an arrow on the string. Brace yourself for the effort, put your weight into it, and draw slowly, steadily, and with faith. There, it's over. Now, never draw your bow one fraction of an inch beyond this. You have tempted Providence sufficiently, and it has been kind to you. So, any amateur bowyers, and even us who make many, many bows over the years, just coming up the full draw, it's always, is it going to be all right? Usually it is, but sometimes it can't be.
Yeah, so it's more of a warning rather than an instruction to tiller a bow till it's nearly broken, which people seem to use it to mean.
Yes, that's not quite right. But
no.
It's just an old saying that has been around for 300 years probably.
Yeah.
And it's just everyone remembers it, and it's stuck. Really.
Yeah, it sounds dramatic, doesn't it?
It certainly does. I'll go to another book.
Oh.
We've been trying to sell some of our books, but I don't know, people aren't much interested in books anymore. It's all on the interweb.
Don't tell them that. No, there are no books on the internet.
This one isn't for sale. We did sell them a copy of The Archer's Club. I think it was the first edition. That one isn't the first edition. This is Archery by Robert Elmer. Ta-da. Written in 1920s probably. And this is a reference to a warbow. Now again, on the Facebook and various things on the internet, a lot of people are now interested in very heavyweight bows, the sort of things people imagine they might have been using in medieval battles. And the term warbow has come about to differentiate it from the target bow, or a more lightweight weapon that's used in target shooting. And some people say, well, warbow, no, that's a modern saying, they weren't called warbows. But looking back in this book, he refers to someone who was writing in the 1500s. And if I can find his name, it was Sir John Smythe. And he was apparently inspired by what seemed to him the incompetence of those in command at a gathering of the defending forces at Tilbury in the summer of 1588. A knight named Sir John Smythe wrote in 1589 and had published in 1590 a book of criticism whose half-page title may be condensed to certain discourses of the musket and longbow. And here longbow is written long-bow, right, which is the Longbow Society write longbow. And he carries on, it's only work I've read which gives a detailed account of English military archery by a soldier who saw it in use, as he speaks of having seen service in France in the time of Edward VI, which meant 1549 to 1550. He was probably a man of about 60. Strikes one as having had conservative ideas, a cranky disposition, a well-informed mind, a good faculty of observation, and a considerable knowledge of archery. The book was suppressed by the authorities within a fortnight of its publication, and so is exceedingly rare. But I think we did look for it on the internet, and you can actually buy facsimile copies of it.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So anyway, his copy was given to him, and he goes on the following answer to those who contempt the bow gives us valuable information. The imperfections of the longbow, again longbow, do consist only of the breaking of the bow or bowstring, for which in times past, when there were great, I'm not sure what you mean by a compt made of archery, there was special care had that all livery or war bows, so he's referring to livery or war bows, and he spelt war bows W-A-R-R-E, as might have been common at the time, being made of the wood of yew, no longer than now they use them, and so very well backed and not that seldom they never break. Besides that, the archers did use to temper with fire a convenient quantity of wax, rosin, and fine tallow together in such sort that rubbing their bows with a very little whereof laid upon a woolen cloth, it did conserve them in all perfection against all weather of heat, frost, and wet. And the strings being made of very good hemp with a kind of water glue to resist wet and moisture at the same. Strings being made by the archers themselves with fine thread, well whipped, it also very seldom break. So there he refers to a war bow, and this is back in the 1500s. So
500 years ago.
So it was a word in use then, so we shouldn't, say anything to anyone who uses the term now. It was It's an ancient term. So there we are, war bow.
There we are.
And that was, it's copied in there, but it's from the book written by Sir John Smythe in 1590.
Wow. There we
Interesting stuff.
Yeah.
What else have we got? Oh, that's warbow. We've done warbow. Another myth that I heard of, and I thought it was a load of rubbish, that anyone involved in archery or even making bows made them particularly attractive to the opposite sex. I mean, have you heard that? But I thought it was rubbish. But then I keep getting emails from beautiful Russian women wanting to marry me. So it's got to be right, isn't it? You can't argue with the internet.
No.
Duh. We like how the Englishmen make things go so long with their hands. And the sawdust, it goes everywhere when they have finished.
I mean, all the time. I'm getting them, and the odd one from the Philippines as well.
I think you should take them up on it.
It's got to be right. It's got to be right. You can't argue with it, can you?
Really not.
Both of them. It's got to be right.
Beating them off with a big stick, we are.
With a broken bow, yeah.
Well, there you are, folks. I hope we've mythified you with our old Bowyers longbow myths. Bowyer old longbow, old Bowyers myths thing, legends. And I'm sure you've got your own, I know you've probably got your own opinions on some of the ones that we've shone some light on here. So we go on.
And your own Russian woman.
And your own, you've shone light on her own.
We don't want to be sexist, so it might be a Russian man as well. You never know.
Yeah, whatever twangs your string. Yeah, exactly. So if you've got any of your own, or you want to comment on the ones that we've mentioned here, then you know how to do that in the box below. If you'd like to subscribe, then you can do by hitting the subscribe thing, and there's some more videos on the screen, probably covering Richard's head, Richard's head. And so we'll see you again next time for more myths and legends.
Yeah.